It's January 28th, and I'm sitting here with Cindi Bigelow, the third generation president and CEO of RC Bigelow Tea.
Yep.
And I want to thank you for taking the time to meet with us at It's a Small Business World.
It's totally my pleasure, believe me.
Thank you. And Cindi, as I was doing my research on Bigelow Tea,
Okay.
I found it to be an absolutely fascinating company. One reason for that is because just about almost 70 years ago, your grandmother, Ruth Campbell Bigelow, in her family kitchen, started experimenting, correct?
That's right.
And after she sent the tea out to friends and family and acquaintances, she got constant comment that it was a great tea.
Yes.
So can you talk to me a little bit about the history, about your grandmother, and about your inspiration?
Well, you know, it is neat. We are very fortunate that we are still 100% family owned and operated. And it is something that my grandmother started. She was always an entrepreneur. She was an interior designer, and my grandfather was in publishing and then actually a broker for foods. And when the Depression hit, they lost everything. And so she really thought about what she could do for the family, what kind of business she could start. And she realized there wasn't a good tea in this country. And so it was just plain black tea at that time. So she found an old colonial recipe. She worked on it for actually several years with a friend of hers, and they perfected it, sent it off to a group of women who enjoyed it, and the next day said it was a source of constant comment, and she loved that name because she sort of, to her it meant like, you know, when you drink this product, you want to just talk about it, which is so true back then especially. So that was sort of our beginning, our roots. She was an entrepreneur, though. As I said, she was involved with a lot of different products, and it was really my father that really made her focus on tea and really extended the line. And so now we're very lucky. We are the #1 specialty tea company in the United States. We're #1 in green, #1 in blacks, and #2 in the herbal, but the overall specialty. I'm very happy that what started in my grandmother's kitchen is still so successful 70 years later. And when you ask me, you know, for me, my entrepreneurial spirit, or how do I keep that going, I just try to always remember how the company started, to never lose those touch points, but also to make sure that I'm keeping us relevant. You know, some people will say, well, that's my grandmother's tea. Well, it certainly was. That was my grandmother's tea. But how do I also make it the tea of the millennials and the young people and women and families that are just starting families for the first time? That's a very important touch point for them and getting involved with tea. So I'm constantly reinventing and trying to reinvent what we do, how we do it, etc. So it's a big job, trust me, to try to keep that entrepreneurial spirit going in this company 70 years later.
It's fascinating, and one of the things that I really struck me was the mission statement of the company. And the overall statement is to, and correct me, you know, you can tweak it for me, but do the right thing and good things will follow.
Absolutely.
And can you talk to me a little bit about how that plays out in this era?
Well, you know, it's sort of the philosophy that I've always had, and I just said, you know, you do things for the right reason. I sort of look at it as a mosaic of touch points. If you just do the right thing and you're constantly putting down the right touch points of doing them, they're going to eventually come together for a beautiful picture. And that's how I try to run the company. Obviously, profit and margin are very important. But it's not just about profit and margin. It is about just trying to do the right thing. So whether it's doing things for the employees, because A, it's good for the employees, but it's just the right thing to do, or out in the community, it's just the right thing to do, or from our greening sustainability. And I think the employees really appreciate it. And I think there's a sincerity to what you do, if that's your motive, that I think people can really relate to. So should I be a better networker and get out there trying to maybe exploit relationships and do things that I think a lot of other businesses, big businesses, might do? I can't say for sure. It's just not who we are. We just try to do it for the right reasons.
Can you talk a little bit about the 4 basic principles, which I thought were really very interesting and seemed to be what the stronghold of the company?
And I'm assuming that you mean in our mission statement, the consumer, the suppliers,
Right.
the employees, and the community.
Correct.
Yeah, those are obviously the centerpiece of our company. The consumer, it's our job every day to make sure that we provide the most flavorful cup of tea possible consistently for the best value. And I think that's the big difference with Bigelow Tea is that commitment to that flavorful cup. I will drink 5 different teas from 5 different tea companies, all with the same name. Maybe it's chamomile, it's green tea, or an English breakfast. And I can just guarantee you that for the value, that cup that we deliver is so flavorful. So we're always making sure that each cup is that flavorful, but also new flavors that are exciting and different. So the consumer is always number one to us. Our suppliers, it's the same thing. How do we have good long-term relationships when we have issues? How do we work them out? How do we work together as teams to get to a better place? Many of our suppliers, especially in the tea industry, we've been using for over 30 years. I was just in Calabria, Italy, where I was with our oil of bergamot supplier. Last year I was in Sri Lanka, where we buy all our teas from the top of the mountains in Sri Lanka. You know, people tend to think of Bigelow as, well, it's everywhere, so it must be a mass tea. Well, I am happy that we are everywhere. It's because we're probably the number one first specialty tea out there. But it's not about that. It's about that quality. It's about using the same bergamot family farm in Calabria, Italy, which, by the way, everything that they do is organic. There's no fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, nothing that he does with that oil of bergamot. We do not claim it as organic because he doesn't go through the proper paperwork. But the bottom line is we know that this has been third generation company producing this oil of bergamot. We're probably one of the few tea companies that still use the real oil of bergamot. Very, very expensive, up to $150 a pound. And yet people look at our Earl Grey and compare it to like someone for, let's say, a higher price and say, that must be a better tea. No way. So the consumer, the suppliers, it all works together. We take care of our suppliers, we have long-term relationships, we take care of the consumer. Of course, the next one is the employees, which is a huge thing for us. I look at myself as an employer for not 330 individuals, but for 330 families, and I think that's a big difference as well in our company. We understand that we're not just employing the person, but we also have to take care of the family with good benefits, good health insurance, a positive work environment so they can go home and have a positive experience. What kind of wellness programs can we do for the well-being of our employee? Putting in sleep seminars, stress seminars, eating well seminars, exercising seminars. So taking care of the employee in a holistic approach. And then the last one is the community, which is near and dear to my heart. I love to give back to the community. So do all the employees love to give back to the community. If anything, I have to reel that in a little bit sometimes. I'm like, okay, we do make tea bags here. But we love to give back to the community for what you asked me about earlier, because we can, and it's just doing the right thing. Do we think we're going to sell more tea in Fairfield, Connecticut, or Boise, Idaho, or Louisville, Kentucky, because we take care of the community? Probably not. I'd like to think so. I'd like to think that everybody in Fairfield only drinks Bigelow Tea because we're here and we're giving it our all, but that's not reality. But we do it because we should and we can. And the employees love it. They love giving back. It's great.
One of the things that you and I spoke about off camera was the garden that you and your employees do, and I just found that so fascinating in keeping in line with what we're talking about. Can you talk a little bit about that, Cindi?
Well, there's so many things that our employees do that are great. You know, I will be honest, from the greening perspective, sustainability, it's easy in my position because I'll just say this is an important company initiative. We need to do this for the right reasons. I don't establish set metrics with set parameters that they have to achieve X goal. So I give them the freedom. So we have green teams in each one of our plants, and oh my gosh, the things they come up with. So in our cafeterias now, everything is compostable, the forks, the knives, the cups. Even if the soup does sort of melt in the bowl, it's compostable. We are 0 to landfill in all of our facilities. That means we have less than 9%. We actually have closer to 4% that actually is allowed to go to landfill, so you still can be designated 0 to landfill. So that means 97% is being recycled, or reused, or composted, which is very exciting. But then recently, what you're asking about, the employees came to me and they said, we want to do a community garden. I said, oh, Okay, what does that mean? Well, we want to use the green in the front, and we want to build this whatever, and it's going to all be sustainable, and we're going to use these catch basins to get the water, and it's going to, of course, be organic, and we're going to bring all the vegetables to the local pantry. And I was like, ugh, all right, let's do it. And I'll pull in every week, you know, when I'm coming in once a week, I'll see all a group of employees out there with little straw hats and their little baskets, and they're putting in the most beautiful tomatoes, the largest basil I've ever seen, cucumbers that are going to be going to the local food bank. And I'll say, gee, can I have a tomato? And they're like, no. I'm like, really? And I don't even get a tomato. So come the end of the year, I think we had 100 pounds this year that we brought to the local food bank. I finally said, can I just have one tomato? And they let me have one tomato. And I have to tell you, it's probably the best tomato. I'm not kidding you. Probably one of the best tomatoes I've ever had in my life. So yeah, that's our little food garden. Our organic vegetable garden.
That's fantastic. And I saw from going through your site all the different things that you do, but the category sustainability really got to me, TEA, and all the different things that the company is doing, from the solar panels to the air conditioning and then the heating units.
Geothermal that we're doing now, that'll be over the next year. We're putting a geothermal heating, cooling inside the company. And we do have about 900 solar panels, get about 15% of our energy in the corporate headquarters from those. And again, the zero to landfill. The stuff that these individuals are doing in our plants is just really so, I don't know, I'm in awe of their work, and it's really their own ideas. I mean, when I go down to visit the plants, I always meet with the greening teams, and they share with me the work that they're doing, and they're so jazzed up about it that sometimes I'm not even listening to what they're saying. I'm smiling and beaming so hard at how excited they are about the work that they're doing. And he is literally having to walk through a field of manure to collect the tea dust that's sort of gone all over the place. And he's laughing, I'm laughing, and I'm just saying, if anybody ever knew. But it's just the commitment the employees have to doing the right thing and the sustainability. It's something I'm very, very proud of.
So let's go back for a moment to something you talked about, because I think that's really interesting, is how do you keep your product relevant, and how do you get that millennial generation into your tea?
Well, that is the very important question. Well, the foundation is making sure the teas that we do have on the marketplace are top notch. That's very, very important. Secondly is coming out with relevant flavors and products that are what they're looking for. Third is communicating to them in a language that's important. And the things that we like to do for the right reasons, sustainability, community, is the things that they want to see. But how do we get that message out there to them? And then our marketing campaigns over the next year or two, what do we need to be doing? Again, where are they talking? How are they talking? What do they want to see and hear? So we spend a lot of time really talking about what we need to do for that. One of the things that we did is recently just revamped our entire packaging. And the reason why we did that is because we recognized that 70 years ago, everybody knew Bigelow was a family company. If you ask today how many people know that Bigelow Tea is a family company, I'm going to say 70 to 80% do not. So we had to take our packaging and let that do more work for us. That's very important, so that they understand about family, quality, our history, our commitment to our recipes. So it was a very large project for us. It cost this little family tea company about $3 million to make all these changes, but we're really excited that we think this is, and from the feedback we're getting from younger consumers, we're seeing that is helping getting the message out there, in addition to the marketing campaigns that we need to be doing and the products, the new products.
Are you using the internet much, or Facebook much?
Social media, Facebook. We have, hundreds of thousands of people on our Facebook, thank God. I would love to talk about tea. Tea is a very passionate subject. Sometimes social media can be a real negative. I've been dealing with lately a particular blogger who means well and is really into health, which is fantastic, as am I, and has put really some significantly misinformation about Bigelow Tea on the Facebook and on the website that this individual puts out for hundreds of thousands of people to read. And that's very difficult for me because you have to honor the space they're in, but then how do you come back and respectfully say, all your information is wrong, let's get our facts straight, because you don't want to go necessarily into their sphere because that's where they are allowed to talk, but then how do you deal with misinformation, mis-facts? Bigelow Tea is non-GMO. Someone can say we are GMO. Well, we're non-GMO. You can't make that statement. They could make a comment about our filter paper is not, there's things in that filter paper that are not good. I hate to tell you, we all use oxygen bleached paper in the industry. They're the same 3 suppliers. All of the tea bag papers are safe, not just Bigelow, but all of our tea bag papers are safe. So there's things that can be said in a social media setting that's very difficult for me to try to figure out how I can get at that in a positive way without causing another frenzy. But it's a challenge. Social media is a real challenge. It's a little bit of tiger by the tail, I got to tell you.
One of the things that I read about in the Huffington Post, where you have an article about being nice and endangered virtue, and I have to say I loved it. I just loved it. And here you are speaking to a group of parents, and they're all nodding their heads about, oh yes, a doctor, a lawyer, and then you said,
yeah,
do you want your kids to be nice?
Yeah.
And that really hit home for me, raising 3 children of my own in this suburban community.
Yeah.
And can you talk a little bit about that and how that plays on a day-to-day basis within your company?
Well, I can tell you that I'm not always nice in the company, so let's get that straight. I think it's a very important quality. I have a philosophy, not that you want to hear all my philosophies in life, but, life is rather simple if you break it down. You wake up, you do your best, you go to bed, and you wake up again. That's kind of it. I don't know how many days you have of that, but that's it. So if you're going to wake up every day, let's try to make the world a better place. Let's try to make it a nicer place. You have an opportunity with so many touch points, whether it's the grocery store, the gas station, it used to be with the toll attendants. You can make the world a better place. Why not try? So I raised my kids very much saying the first thing I want is nice, because you can be and you should be and you can make the world a better place. Secondly, I want you to work hard. And third, I want you to understand what humility is, and that, you're only a small speck in this big spectrum of the world. And that's exactly what I got. I got nice children that work really hard, that I think have a humility that is somewhat surprising given how they possibly could be for other reasons. So I'm very, very proud of that. That's the same thing I try to work with my managers on. It is about driving the business forward. It is about making sure we're successful. But why do I do it? Why do my family does it? Because we're an employer for 330 people. So that's why we do that. If everyone realized that they can all make a difference in people's lives like we try to in this business, I think the world would possibly be a little bit nicer. But it's not being nice every day in the sense that I'm very honest. I communicate with the employees exactly how I'm feeling about things when I'm disappointed, that I know they could do better, that I'm very concerned that they're not pulling their weight. I know that they should be giving me their A game. Everybody's A game is different. So sometimes it's very stressful here. It really can be, for sure, but it's all for the right reasons. And I think if people look for the reasons why you're being aggressive and tough and understand that it's because you're taking care of 330 families, I think that makes it easier. So it is about being nice, and sometimes to get to that point, it's not always easy. But I am the most proud of how my children are, because they are truly lovely human beings. Are they perfect? No. Am I perfect? God, no. But I'd like to think that for the most part, people think I'm okay, pretty nice.
So one thing that you did mention in that article, which really hit for me, is that you want your children to be resilient. And I bring that up because when you talk about the difficulties of social media and the difficulties of running a company and supporting, being responsible for 330 families that your 330 employees represent, how does resiliency play into that?
Huge. You have to be resilient, just in life in general. Again, you boil it down to you wake up, you do the best you can, you go to bed. Tomorrow's another day. The morning you wake up, it's a new day. And the employees need to see a resilience in me. I cannot have a a tough year or a hit that we deal with in the organization, whether it's a social media problem, they have to see that it's okay. How are we going to deal with this? How are we going to get better? How are we going to learn from our mistakes? How are we going to get to the better side? So resilience is such a key in life. Again, I don't know how long each of us are going to be on this earth and how many days we're going to wake up and try our hardest, but I'll tell you, every day you got to just make it your best, give it your best. You can't give up. So for me, it's a very important skill set for leaders, but I think it's a very important skill set for life in general. So I think my kids are extremely resilient. I'm blessed. They haven't had to be a lot to be resilient about, but at 53 and a half, yeah, resilience is a key characteristic that I need.
And let's talk a little bit about challenge and your approach to challenges.
Well, they come in all forms, often, and I have a team approach to challenges in the business. So if we have an issue, if anything, I've been accused of including too many people in that challenge, but I like to bring the appropriate parties, or even those that I feel could be an associate to the appropriate parties, and we talk openly about the issues that we're facing, and you do a round table conversation, open dialogue about how to address them. They know I have to make the ultimate decision on those, but it's not without tremendous counsel or support of everything that I'm hearing at the table. But we do a lot of that with teamwork, that we'll get back together within a week, a day, or 3 days, whatever the issue is associated with it, and continue to working on it until when we finish with the challenge, we feel that we've come to a better and higher place because of it. We've learned from it, but we didn't just react, we didn't just put a Band-Aid on it, but we challenged ourselves to figure out how we can even be better in the future so that we're not having to put our fingers in the dike the next time.
Do you find that your employees appreciate that approach?
I'm going to say 99% of them do. I will tell you that it is challenging for some because when you come out of a meeting that might be 5 hours long about a potential problem that could cost the company a significant amount of money for things that you're trying to do, and somebody walks into your office afterwards and you're saying, not now, they can take that personally. You know, I'll try to go around to them later and say, look, I hope you understand that. You know, right now I'm just dealing with some particular issues with an account that's been very challenging. And some people get it, and there are very few that sometimes just don't get it. They just are upset that the mood wasn't perfect at the time. But it's unfortunately, is in the seat of the CEO, you are the driver, but also you are the final point of all issues at a certain level. And that's a lot. That's a lot coming your way. So people that work with you have to give you that space and honor that room that you need to deal with the variables coming your way and understand that you're doing it for them. So there are times you're going to have to be very challenging, very direct, and very aggressive. I believe, and I'd love to, you know, talk to other CEOs. I have many friends that are CEOs. I've sat on many boards with CEOs. But that's just, I feel it kind of comes with the territory with this job. So I'd say 99% of the employees get it. There might be a few that don't quite.
Let's talk a little bit about work-life balance for you, because you're in a huge position here. You know, you're in 1% of the population is doing what you're doing.
So you prioritize, you compartmentalize. I think women are good, not that men aren't, but I think women are good at compartmentalizing. So my kids know they're my priority. I'm blessed that I get to talk to them probably every day for a little bit, which means the world to me. I also try to take care of myself the best I can, whether it's eating well, exercising not as much as I'd like, but also like little things. I work a lot of hours, obviously. A lot of people work a lot of hours. But like maybe in the morning, I might start working when I wake up, but then I might take an hour just to relax before I come in and read the New York Times or Wall Street Journal or my local papers and try to just have a little bit of me time. And I'll schedule walks with friends or go skiing on weekends. yeah, I try to schedule and I try to compartmentalize the best that I can. But it is a big issue. Again, I am blessed to have a lot of wonderful CEO friends, and the job takes its toll and can on the family life for sure. So you really have to keep that at a very high level in your mind, how you don't let it consume you, so that you clearly know that your family's getting the short end of the stick. So it's a passion of mine to have put my kids first and foremost. I think my father did that and my mother did that, but my father was running the company, did that for me, and it was very natural for me to do. And I kid around with my kids. I tell them as soon as they're young still, 20 and 22, but I say if they ever have kids and I become a grandmother, I'm retiring tomorrow, and all I'm going to do is be their nanny.
Let me ask you this, because as I was researching the company and having known you as I do on the periphery of our lives, would you say that there's a crossover between you and your grandmother? Did you know her, and are you similar in ways?
Well, no one's ever asked me that question. I believe very, very much so. Good and bad. She was a very generous woman. She was very community minded. She actually adopted a town in West Virginia, which I did not know about till later. She used to send down truckloads of coats, shoes, school supplies. I've read letters from the doctors in the area that she used to buy glasses for the kids so they could read. So she was amazing. I think she loved her son tremendously. She only had one child, my father. But she also, in business, was tenacious. I don't know, since she passed away when I was 6 and she was a loving grandmother, is all I ever saw, but she was tenacious. And I would venture to guess that a few people around me might possibly say that I'm tenacious. Now, the word tenacious can also carry with it some things that are not so fabulous. I just try to be tenacious, but open communication of why I'm being tenacious. So if I'm being aggressive, I'm explaining to you why and my motivation. I don't know if she did the same thing, but I try to take that aggressive personality that I know she had, which is how she started a business and was successful. And I just try to soften the edges enough so that, the people that are close to me understand when I'm driving, why I'm driving, when I am pushing even harder, why I'm pushing even harder, so that they can be on the journey with me. But I think we're very similar from what I understand.
And as a woman in business, do you find that there are any specific challenges to you?
Well, what's interesting is that she was a woman in business. Can you imagine all those years ago? That just blows me away.
I don't even know how she got there.
I don't know how she did it.
What do you think? Was it the Depression that was a driving force for her?
Well, she was a very successful interior designer prior. This woman was just going to be successful, and that was just how it was going to be. But it was really my father that kept her successful, because again, she was all over the place. She wanted tapioca. She was selling, Chinese seasoning to the Asians in the marketplace. It was like penny business, and it's really my father that said, Mom/my grandma, tea, at least there's a little bit of margin. Tapioca, there's zero. Chinese seasoning, I think we're losing money on. So really, he was the one who put us into the tea business. She was the one who started the idea with Constant Comment. But for me, being a woman in business definitely is interesting. Anyone who knows me knows that I try to consider myself a CEO, not a woman CEO, but clearly I am a woman CEO. There's nothing to do about that. But I do think that men react to you differently because you're a woman. I think women react to you differently because you're a woman. And you just have to honor that and work with that and honor both sexes for what are their sort of normal tendencies, and then honor each individual for what their specific tendencies are. So my executive team is male, so they're all male, so there's a certain style that I can have that is an umbrella, but then each one of them requires a different particular style. If I had a woman executive that I'm hoping to have join relatively soon, because I do have some opening positions over the next couple of years, because we've all been together for 30 years, so that's some retirement taking place here. I don't think I would act any differently. I think I would be the exact same CEO at that table that I was with a woman or not with a woman, or with men and with a woman. But she would get her own, again, specific style when I was working one-on-one with her, as each one of the guys does. So there's differences, and you have to just work with that. It's really being true to who you are. So there's women that are different than I am. There's men that I'm very similar to. You have to be true to who you are and what your personality is, and how it's best for you to operate and lead.
So, Cindi, where do you see the company in the next 5 years? What's your vision?
I'd like to diversify our portfolio. I'd like to consider us still being the number one specialty tea, but you gotta remember, it's harsh out there. We're dealing with companies that are billion-dollar companies, public companies that have got more money, diversified portfolios, and they're gunning for us because we're the number one. So it's a challenge. So how do we continue to stay relevant, which is what my goal is, to still stay the number one in 5 years in the position that we are today, but also diversify the portfolio as well, and have at that point in 5 years really established a stronger foothold into the millennials with our tea.
Where do you see the plantation fitting into any of this?
The plantation is one of those situations where it's just doing the right thing. The plantation is a labor of love. It's a beautiful asset of my parents. They purchased it, and they love it. And to be honest, really, let's think about it. The tea company comes in, the Bigelow family, and saves that 127 acres from being turned into condominiums. So I'm never going to say it's going to be a huge moneymaker, but at the same time, it's so beautiful. 60,000, 70,000 people a year get to be exposed to the tea, get to form a real relationship with the tea. Gets to really be the largest commercial, by far, plantation in our country. We do have very small ones, I believe, in Oregon and Hawaii, but this is probably the largest commercial by far, so maintaining that. So I think it's just a beautiful, beautiful commitment to the tea and the tea industry, the tea bush and the tea industry. So it's something we're very proud of. It'll very much be part of our portfolio. But it's really following the sort of the philosophy of just doing the right thing.
And getting back to your portfolio, how do you see that growth in the next 5 years?
That I can't share with you, but we have a lot of things that
Excellent.
we're looking at to diversify the portfolio.
Excellent. And is there a new tea coming out for 2014 that we should be on the lookout for?
And I can't share that with you either, but yes, we do have some interesting things in the works for the next year. We have to. That's our job. That's my job.
Excellent. And my last question to you is about when I saw you on the TV downstairs trying teas, and you were saying that in the Indian culture, when they try the teas, they have a spittoon, and they're
In Sri Lanka?
Yeah, in Sri Lanka. So what is that about?
Yes, oh gosh, I had such a great trip last year to Sri Lanka. First Bigelow family member to ever go to Sri Lanka, and we are the number one importer of Sri Lankan teas in the United States. They are, in our opinion, the highest quality tea that you can buy. They're all hand-picked, beautiful. So when I spent a couple weeks in Sri Lanka last year, I was with all these different tea gardens, and I got to be with really tea people. I mean, this industry was built on tea people. There's a heritage to tea, being a tea family still, and being one of the few tea family businesses out there, certainly of this size. To be there with these people that they live, breathe, sleep tea. They can test it. They know every little nuance about the leaf, how it was plucked, what that flush is like compared to the previous flush. Was it properly plucked? Do they need to go back to the garden section and do more coaching on how to pluck those leaves? But then after there's drinking it, which is this whole art, they've got these large spittoons and they're out there removing the tea, which we don't. When we drink our tea here, we drink it all. So I've been threatening my team back here that we're going to be bringing in very large spittoons on wheels, and we're going to be having a spittoon spitting contest pretty soon. They're a little worried.
And what was that sipping noise that you were making?
Oh, it's very important. It's very important when you are if you even want to when you're drinking your tea, but when you're testing teas, that you bring as much air into your mouth as possible so that the tea both opens up with the aeration, but also will spray across all sections of your mouth so that you're getting the full flavor profile of the product. So there's a real art to sipping and trying and tasting our teas.
You can go your